Hey, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm really happy you're joining us today because what you're about to hear has the power to change how you think, how you make decisions, and how you shape your future. Before we begin, make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, and turn on notifications because here we grow together. And I promise you, every episode will push your mind forward in a powerful way. All right, let's dive in. Part 1. The Power of Rethinking. Let me start with a story. Imagine a group of elite firefighters flying over a forest in Montana. They're not regular firefighters, they're smoke jumpers. They literally jump out of airplanes to land inside dangerous wildfires. One day, they landed beside a steep hill with flames rising across the valley. But suddenly, the fire changed direction. It rushed straight toward them, faster than they could run, hotter than anything they had ever seen. It was a wall of flames tall enough to swallow buildings. Their leader, Dodge, shouted for everyone to turn around and run uphill. And they did. They ran with all their strength, carrying heavy packs, tools, saws, axes, everything they needed to fight the fire. But here's where the story becomes unbelievable. Dodge suddenly stopped. Instead of running, he took out matches and began lighting the grass in front of him on fire. The men behind him thought he had absolutely lost his mind. Who starts another fire when a giant fire is chasing them? But Dodge wasn't crazy. He was thinking differently, thinking fast and thinking again. He was creating an escape fire. By burning the grass ahead of him, he created a small safe zone with no fuel. When the massive wildfire arrived, it had nothing to burn in that spot. Dodge lay down inside the circle of burnt ground and survived. Most of his team didn't. They continued running with heavy tools because all their training told them you never drop your equipment, you fight the fire, you don't start another one. Their instincts were strong, but their instincts were outdated. And that's the entire point of this first part. Sometimes survival demands that we let go of our old beliefs, our old tools, our old habits, and create something completely new. Sometimes the only way forward is to rethink. Now let's talk about why most of us don't rethink. You've probably seen this around you. People argue to defend beliefs they formed 10 years ago. People stay in jobs they hate because it's what they've always done. People stay stuck in relationships simply because they're afraid to question their assumptions. Humans love feeling right. We love certainty. We love stability. Our brains prefer the comfort of old answers rather than the discomfort of new questions. Scientists call this seizing and freezing. We seize the first idea that feels right, and then we freeze it. We stop questioning it. We stop testing it. We stop updating it. That's why students often believe they should never change answers on multiple choice tests. They think their first instinct is always correct. But research shows the opposite. When students change an answer, it's usually from wrong to right. The problem isn't that people can't rethink. The problem is that people are reluctant to rethink. Because questioning yourself feels like instability. It feels like you're losing a part of your identity. We cling to what's familiar, even when it's holding us back. Just like those firefighters clung to their heavy tools while running uphill. Tools that ultimately slowed them down. The truth is this. Your biggest enemy is not ignorance, it's your unwillingness to rethink what you believe. The frog story, and why we're the real frogs. You may have heard the story of the frog that gets boiled alive because the water temperature rises slowly. Scientists now say the story is wrong. A real frog would jump out, but humans don't. We stay in bad situations because they change slowly. We stay in jobs that drain us. We stay in habits that limit us. We stay in beliefs that expired years ago. The frog is smarter than we are because once we believe a story, even a false one, we stick to it. We stop questioning it. That's why rethinking is a skill we must learn intentionally. Thinking versus rethinking. Let's imagine your mind has 4 modes. 1. The preacher. When someone challenges your beliefs, you defend them like they're sacred. You protect what you already think. 2. The prosecutor. When you argue, you attack other people's ideas. You want to prove them wrong. 3. The politician. You say things to gain approval. You want people to support your views. 4. The scientist. You run experiments. You form hypotheses, not final conclusions. You look for evidence, not validation. You want the truth, not the victory. Most people live their lives as preachers, prosecutors, or politicians. Very few think like scientists. And yet, the scientist mindset is the most powerful mindset for personal growth, business, relationships, and life. A scientist doesn't get attached to a belief. A scientist updates their opinion whenever new evidence appears. This is how you stay smart. This is how you stay open. This is how you grow. The fall of the famous inventor. Let me give you an example. There was once a young genius who built his own record player from Lego, who fixed every broken TV in his school, and who eventually created a revolutionary device used by presidents, celebrities, and business leaders. This device became the hottest thing in the world, the award-winning, super-secure smartphone that everyone wanted. But when touchscreen phones entered the market years later, he refused to rethink. He insisted that people wanted keyboards. He insisted that powerful internet browsers were unnecessary. He insisted the world would not adopt a glass screen. He did not operate like a scientist anymore. He operated like a preacher of his past success. And the result? His company went from controlling almost half of the U.S. smartphone market to controlling less than 1%. Not because he wasn't smart, but because he stopped rethinking. Remember this, your knowledge can become your prison if you never update it. Why smart people fail to rethink. It might sound strange, but research shows highly intelligent people are often worse at rethinking. Why? Because they're fast at finding arguments to justify what they already believe. Their intelligence becomes a weapon to defend outdated ideas. They see patterns that support their opinions and ignore the patterns that challenge them. This creates 2 dangerous biases. 1. Confirmation bias. We look for evidence that supports our beliefs. 2. Desirability bias. We believe something because we want it to be true. Both biases close our minds and trap us inside old world views. And here's the scary part. The smarter you are, the harder it becomes to admit you're wrong. That's why leaders, companies, and entire countries collapse when they refuse to rethink. The rise of the smartphone and the power of team rethinking. Let's look at another side of the story. At one point, another company was also against creating a smartphone. Their CEO hated mobile carriers. He didn't want to make phones at all. He didn't want to enter the market. But his team insisted, "We're not trying to turn our company into a phone company. We're trying to put everything you already make into people's pockets." They reframed the idea. They challenged his beliefs. They pushed him to rethink. Eventually, he agreed, and the result transformed the world. This shows something important. Rethinking is not only an individual skill, it's a cultural skill. The people around you can help you rethink, or they can trap you in old ideas. Surround yourself with people who question you, who challenge you, who force you to see what you don't see. Those are the people who help you grow. The rethinking cycle versus the overconfidence cycle. Let me show you the difference. The rethinking cycle. 1. Humility. I might be wrong. 2. Doubt. Let me check. 3. Curiosity. What am I missing? 4. Discovery. Here's something new. 5. More humility. There's still more to learn. This cycle makes you wise. The overconfidence cycle. 1. Pride. I'm right. 2. Conviction. I know this. 3. Confirmation bias. See? Evidence. 4. Validation. People agree with me. 5. Arrogance. I don't need to rethink. This cycle destroys careers, companies, relationships, and nations. The choice is yours. Will you build your mind like a scientist or defend old ideas like a politician? Living like a scientist. A scientist is never done learning, never done questioning, never done updating. When you live this way, you don't fear being wrong. You fear being stuck. You don't fear doubt. You fear ego. You don't fear new information. You fear old information that no longer works. This is the mindset of the most successful entrepreneurs, the most visionary leaders, the most creative innovators, and the wisest people. It's not about being perfect. It's about being willing to change. Part 2 is coming next, and trust me, it goes even deeper. We're just getting started. Stay curious, and I'll see you in the next part. Part 2. The Confidence Trap, Imposter Syndrome, and the Sweet Spot of Growth. Let's begin. The blindness we don't see. Earlier, we talked about people being blind to their own rigid beliefs. But now, we're going deeper, into the type of blindness that affects your view of yourself. To understand this, let me take you back to the late 1800s, where doctors encountered a strange medical condition. A woman walked into a clinic complaining about headaches and dizziness. Her vision deteriorated until she could barely navigate her room. Her eyesight got worse and worse until she became completely blind. But here's the shocking part. She insisted she could see perfectly. She wasn't lying. She truly believed she could see. If she bumped into a door, she said, "This room is too dark." If she tripped over a table, she said, "I forgot my glasses." Even when doctors proved she was blind, she denied it. This condition became known as Anton's syndrome, being blind to your blindness. And even though most of us will never experience this physically, we all experience it mentally. We all have areas where we're convinced we're right, even when we're wrong. We all have skills we think we've mastered, even when we haven't. We all have moments where we don't know that we don't know. This is where overconfidence becomes dangerous. And this leads us to the first major idea of Part 2. The armchair quarterback versus the imposter. There are two types of people in this world. 1. The armchair quarterback. This is the person who watches a game and thinks they know more than the coach. They overestimate their abilities. They overestimate their knowledge. They have confidence without competence. You've met these people. The man who has never run a business telling CEOs how to improve. The person who failed a class but gives life advice on that topic. The colleague who is loud, certain, and always sure they're right. This is called overconfidence without skill. Now, on the opposite side, 2, the imposter. This person has talent. This person has competence. This person has experience. Yet they still feel unworthy. They feel like they don't know enough. They worry that people will discover they're not as capable as they seem. You may have felt this at some point in your life. Maybe you got a job you worked hard for and immediately thought, "I hope they don't discover I'm not good enough." Maybe you entered a room full of smart people and felt like you didn't belong. Maybe you achieved something big but felt you didn't deserve it. That's imposter syndrome, competence without confidence. Now here comes the twist. The ideal point is between the two. Most people believe the ideal state is to get rid of imposter syndrome completely and be fully confident all the time. But that's not true. The best performers in the world, the most successful leaders, entrepreneurs, scientists, creators, don't sit on either extreme. They find what we can call the sweet spot, confident humility. Confident humility means you know you are capable, you believe you can learn anything, you trust you can grow, but you also know you don't have all the answers. You recognize your blind spots, you stay curious, and you stay open. This is the mindset that prevents arrogance. This is the mindset that protects you from stagnation. This is the mindset that fuels continuous improvement. And here's the real breakthrough. A little bit of imposter syndrome is actually good for you. Yes, you heard that correctly. Let's talk about that.
Why imposter syndrome can be a secret advantage. We often think that self-doubt is weakness, but science shows the opposite. A small dose of self-doubt can make you, 1, work harder. When you think you need to prove yourself, you give more effort, you prepare better, you push yourself further. 2, work smarter. When you don't assume you already know everything, you question your strategies, you test new ideas, you rethink your approach. In other words, self-doubt unlocks curiosity. Curiosity unlocks innovation. 3, learn faster. People with a bit of imposter syndrome are more likely to ask questions, more likely to seek feedback, more likely to ask for help when needed. They don't pretend to know everything, which makes them more teachable. And here's something surprising. When researchers studied medical students, the ones who felt like imposters were rated by patients as more empathetic, more caring, and more professional. Why? Because they listened more. They asked more questions. They didn't assume they were perfect. Imposter syndrome made them better healers. Let that sink in. The trap of arrogance. On the opposite side is overconfidence. And overconfidence is far more dangerous. In one major research project, managers were asked to evaluate their management skills. Then experts evaluated the same managers. The results were shocking. The worst managers consistently believed they were the best managers. This pattern appears in driving, teaching, leadership, finance, and intelligence. People with the least skill tend to have the most confidence. This is known as the Dunning-Kruger effect, and it explains why some people who speak with the most certainty are often the ones you should trust the least. It's not that they have high confidence, it's that they have low self-awareness. They don't know what they don't know, and when you can't see your weaknesses, you can't grow. That's why arrogant people stay stuck, while humble people rise.
The danger of early success. Life has a funny way of tricking us. When we start something new, whether it's business, sports, art, or studying, we begin as beginners. We know nothing. That's actually a safe place to be. But the danger comes after a little improvement. When you go from beginner to amateur, confidence rises faster than competence. You feel like you get it, but you don't fully understand it yet. This is where most people stop learning because they believe they already know. But in reality, they're standing on the top of what researchers call Mount Stupid. Now, think of this. When a child learns to ride a bike, after the first few tries, they feel invincible. Then they fall hard because they overestimated their ability. Adults do the same thing, just with more expensive consequences. We must be careful not to mistake early progress for mastery. Why humility is a strength, not a weakness. Many people think humility means lowering yourself, but true humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself accurately. It's seeing yourself clearly, strengths and weaknesses included. Humility doesn't say, "I'm not capable." Humility says, "I'm capable, but I still have more to learn." Humility is a growth muscle. Overconfidence is a growth killer. Let me repeat that. Humility is what allows you to grow.
Arrogance is what stops growth entirely. Humility keeps your mind open. Arrogance locks your mind shut. Humility leads to evolving. Arrogance leads to repeating. Humility builds relationships. Arrogance destroys them. Humility asks questions. Arrogance pretends to have answers. Humility invites progress. Arrogance invites disaster. The story of a woman who fought self-doubt and nearly won a presidency. Let me share an inspiring example. In Iceland, after a massive financial collapse, one woman, a business leader, was encouraged by friends and the public to run for president. Her reaction? Who am I to run a country? She felt the deepest imposter syndrome she ever experienced. She felt unqualified. She felt inexperienced. She felt like she didn't belong. But something interesting happened. When people kept urging her to run, she flipped her thinking. Who am I not to serve? If people trust me, maybe I should trust myself. She pushed through her fear. She campaigned with honesty. She campaigned with humility. She spoke to people directly on social media, answered every message, listened deeply. She didn't attack her opponents. She didn't pretend to be perfect. She embraced uncertainty instead of hiding it. And what happened? She ended up finishing second out of almost 20 candidates with almost no political experience. Her opponent, the overconfident former prime minister who contributed to the economic collapse, finished fourth. Her humility made her strong. Her doubts made her relatable. Her transparency made her respected. She didn't win the presidency, but she won something more powerful. She proved that humble leaders can rise and arrogant leaders can fall. The joy of being wrong. Most people hate being wrong because they think being wrong means being stupid. But what if we flip the meaning? What if being wrong means you're learning? What if being wrong means you're expanding your mind? What if being wrong means you're evolving? When you adopt this mindset, your relationship with mistakes transforms. Wrong becomes interesting. Mistakes become data. Errors become experiments. Some of the greatest scientists in history loved being wrong because every time they were wrong, they discovered something new. Imagine if we all lived like that. Imagine being excited when someone challenges your viewpoint. Imagine smiling when new evidence proves you wrong. Imagine celebrating when you learn something that contradicts your assumptions. This is the mindset of lifelong learners. This is the path to mastery. And this is the foundation of true confidence. Not fake confidence, not ego confidence, but confident humility. How to build confident humility. Here are habits you can practice right now. 1. Say, I might be wrong more often. It keeps your mind open. 2. Ask for feedback, especially from people who disagree with you. They see what you can't see. 3. Treat your beliefs as temporary, not permanent. Even strong beliefs should have room to evolve. 4. Separate confidence in your ability from confidence in your tools. You can believe in yourself without believing you already know everything. 5. Seek progress, not perfection. Growth comes from curiosity, not certainty. Humility turns leaders into legends. When researchers studied the most effective leaders in the US and China, they found something surprising. The best leaders weren't the most confident. They weren't the loudest. They weren't the ones with the biggest personalities. They were the ones who combined high confidence, high humility. They knew their strengths. They admitted their weaknesses. They asked for help. They kept learning. They stayed grounded. This leadership style makes organizations safer, more innovative, and more collaborative. And in your personal life, this mindset makes you stronger, smarter, and more adaptable. Humility is not soft. Humility is powerful. If this part opened your eyes, if it helped you see confidence differently, hit the like button, share this video with someone who needs it, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss part 3. In the next episode, we'll explore something even deeper: how to communicate with people who disagree with you, how to change minds without fighting, and how to rethink relationships and conversations. Part 3. How to change minds, win arguments without fighting, and build better conversations. Welcome back, my friend. If you've reached Part 3, that means one thing. You're serious about growing, not just inside your mind, but inside your relationships, your communication, and the way you interact with people. This part is powerful, because if you master what I'm about to share with you, you will transform your conversations, your influence, and your ability to understand people on a deeper level. Why arguments fail, and what actually changes minds. Let's start with a simple truth. Most arguments don't change minds. They make minds harden. Why? Because when people feel attacked, they protect themselves. When they feel judged, they close up. When they feel forced to change, they resist. You've probably experienced it. You present facts, but the other person ignores them. You show proof, but they double down on their beliefs. You speak louder, and they speak louder too. It's like pushing against a locked door. The more you push, the tighter it closes. So what does change minds? Not pressure, not anger, not facts thrown like weapons, but curiosity, respect, questions, and understanding. This brings us to the first major lesson of Part 3. Stop arguing to win. Start arguing to learn. Most people enter a disagreement with one goal. I want to prove I'm right. This is the prosecutor mindset. You build your case like a lawyer. You point out the flaws in the other person's thinking. You collect evidence to attack their argument. But here's the problem. When you act like a prosecutor, the other person stops listening. They become a defendant trying to protect themselves. Nobody grows, nobody learns, nobody wins. The best conversations happen when you enter them like a scientist, not a prosecutor. A scientist doesn't say, I'm right. A scientist says, let me explore, let me understand, let's test ideas. This opens up space for the other person to join you, not fight you. The amazing power of motivational interviewing. Let me introduce you to one of the most powerful communication skills in psychology. It's called motivational interviewing. This technique has helped people overcome addiction, improve relationships, and change deeply rooted behaviors. The secret behind it? Instead of telling people what to think, you help them articulate their own reasons for change. You don't force them, you guide them. Let's break it down into simple steps. Step 1. Ask instead of tell. Most people try to change minds by throwing arguments like punches, but motivational interviewing begins with questions. What makes you feel strongly about this? How did you first come to believe this? Has anything ever made you rethink this a little? What would you need to see or experience to change your mind? When you ask questions, something magical happens. The other person starts thinking for themselves, and when people generate their own insights, the change lasts longer. They're not changing because you pushed them. They're changing because they discovered something. Step 2. Affirm, don't attack. You don't have to agree with someone to respect their perspective. Affirming sounds like, I can see why you'd think that. That's an interesting point. It makes sense that your experience shaped your thinking. When people feel respected, they relax. When they relax, they listen. When they listen, they learn. Respect opens the door. Judgment slams it shut. Step 3. Reflect instead of react. Most people react instantly in arguments. They interrupt, they attack, they defend. But reflecting means you mirror back what the person is saying, calmly, without judgment. So what I hear you saying is, or it sounds like you feel that, or you believe this because. Reflection does two things. One, it shows the other person you're actually listening. 2, it helps them clarify their own thoughts. People often question their own beliefs once they hear them repeated back. It's like placing a mirror in front of someone. They suddenly see themselves more clearly. Step 4. Offer, don't impose. Only after you've asked, affirmed, and reflected do you share your perspective. But you don't impose it. You offer it gently. Would you be open to hearing another viewpoint? Can I share something I've been thinking about? There's a different angle that helped me. Can I show it to you? Most people say yes, because now they feel safe. They invited you to share. They're ready to consider your ideas. You didn't push, you built a bridge, and people walk across bridges, not walls.
The story of the anti-vaccination activist who changed his mind. Let me share a powerful example of how this works. A man named Darrell was deeply committed to a belief. He believed vaccines were dangerous. He believed they didn't work. He led a large community of people who supported these views. But then something unusual happened. A group of scientists reached out to him, not to attack him, not to argue with him, not to shame him, but to listen. They asked questions. They examined his concerns carefully. They respected him as a person. They did not treat him like an enemy. They treated him like a human being with fears and questions. Over time, this built trust. Eventually, he started asking them questions. He compared the evidence they showed him with what he had believed for years. Slowly, quietly, without humiliation, he changed his mind. And then something even more surprising happened. He became an advocate for the very thing he once opposed. Why? Because he was shown respect, not ridicule. Because he was guided, not pushed. Because he discovered the truth himself instead of being forced into it. This is the power of good communication. This is the power of understanding. This is the power of rethinking together. Why facts don't work when people feel threatened. You might be wondering, why don't facts work? Why don't logic and evidence change people's minds? The answer is simple. Because humans don't think logically when they feel emotionally attacked. Imagine someone tells you, you're wrong, you're misinformed, you don't understand. Your brain immediately triggers a defense response. You stop thinking, you start protecting. It's not that you can't process new information, it's that you won't process it while under threat. That's why we must create psychological safety in conversations. When people feel safe, their mind opens. When they feel unsafe, it closes. Influence is not about dominating. It's about creating space. The art of giving advice without being annoying. Giving advice can easily make people defensive. Here's how to give advice that people actually accept. 1. Give them options, not instructions. Instead of saying, you should do this, say, here are 3 possible approaches. Which one do you think fits best? People don't like being controlled, but they love choosing. 2. Share your experience, not your superiority. Don't say, I know better. Say, I've struggled with something similar. Can I share what helped me? 3. Ask permission before advising. Simply ask, would you like my advice? When they say yes, the mind opens. 4. Avoid why questions that sound accusatory. Why did you do that? Why do you believe that? These questions trigger defensiveness. Instead ask, what made you choose that? How did you come to that conclusion? Same question, different emotional impact. How to talk to stubborn people. Every person in your life fits into one of 3 categories. 1. People who are genuinely open. They love hearing new ideas. 2. People who resist but are willing to reconsider. You can help them rethink gently.
3. People who are closed no matter what. They don't want dialogue, they want victory. Here's the truth. You cannot change someone who refuses to participate in their own growth, but you can plant seeds. Here's how. Keep your calm. Ask questions. Make them explain their beliefs. Don't try to win. Offer your views only when invited. End the conversation with respect. Sometimes seeds take weeks, months, or years to grow, but they grow. How to make people rethink without telling them they're wrong. There's a technique called complexity humility. You simply show that the topic is more complicated than they think. For example, instead of saying, "You're wrong," say, "This issue is more complex than it appears. Want to explore it together?" This does two things. It respects their intelligence, and it signals that you are also open to learning. People rethink when they feel they're part of a shared discovery, not a target of correction. The power of listening like a trampoline. Most people listen like stone walls. They absorb nothing. They bounce back nothing. But great communicators listen like trampolines. When someone speaks to you, you absorb their energy, you understand their meaning, and you bounce back something that elevates the conversation, not higher in volume, but higher in insight. Listening is not waiting for your turn to talk. Listening is about helping the other person express themselves more clearly. When you do this, conversations become richer, deeper, and more honest, and people feel safe enough to rethink. When to stop trying to change minds. Sometimes the most powerful act is walking away, not out of weakness, out of wisdom. Here's when to stop. When the person insults you, when they refuse to listen, when they twist your words, when they attack instead of discuss, when they only want to win. At that point, you're not in a conversation, you're in a boxing match, and the smartest fighter is the one who knows when not to enter the ring. You cannot force growth into someone who's committed to staying the same. Save your energy for people who value your mind. The gift of finding people who make you smarter. One of the greatest blessings in life is surrounding yourself with people who challenge your thinking, people who ask difficult questions, people who see what you don't, people who invite you to rethink, people who don't fear disagreement, people who seek truth, not victory. These people don't flatter your ego, they strengthen your mind. Your circle determines your growth. If your friends only agree with you, you'll never evolve. If your friends challenge you, you'll rise. Choose people who sharpen you. Choose people who push you. Choose people who expand you. Your future depends on the people you allow into your mind. Part 4. Reinventing yourself. Letting go, growing forward, and becoming who you're meant to be. This is the final part of our series, and I want to start by saying thank you, not just for watching, but for being willing to rethink, to open your mind, to challenge yourself, and to grow. And now we're going deep into something personal, something emotional, something that has shaped every major transformation in people's lives. How to rethink who you are and become someone new. Let's begin. Why we hold on to old versions of ourselves. Every one of us carries an invisible weight, the weight of who we used to be, the habits we formed years ago, the beliefs we inherited from childhood, the personality we thought was permanent, the career path we believed we had to follow, the expectations others placed on us, the identity we've been protecting, defending, and performing, even when it no longer fits. Most people don't change because they're attached to the story they've always told about themselves. But here's the truth. You are not a finished product. You are a work in progress. Your identity is not a prison. Your identity is a draft, something you can revise, upgrade, and rewrite. But to move forward in life, you must release the old version of you that's holding you back. And that begins with one powerful idea. Detach who you are from what you believe. Imagine you've believed something strongly for years about your career, your personality, your relationships, or your purpose. Suddenly, life shows you something new, a new perspective, a new path, a truth that contradicts what you believed before. Most people reject the new information, not because the new idea is wrong, but because changing their mind would feel like losing a part of themselves. But here's the shift. Your beliefs are not your identity. Your ideas are not your identity. Your past choices are not your identity. You can change your beliefs without losing yourself. In fact, changing your beliefs is how you find yourself. Your identity should be flexible, not fixed. Roots, not chains. When you detach your identity from being right, you free yourself to grow. The courage to let go of old dreams. Let me tell you a story about a rising star in the world of NASA. This woman dreamed her entire life of becoming an astronaut. She studied space passionately. She excelled in physics and engineering. She dedicated her youth to this one single mission. This is who I'm meant to be. Everyone around her believed it too. She had the intelligence, she had the discipline, she had the passion. But during training, something unexpected happened. She discovered that the reality of being an astronaut, the isolation, the long-term confinement, the psychological toll, didn't align with the life she truly wanted. Her dream was no longer her dream. But letting go felt impossible. If she wasn't the future astronaut, then who was she? She had to face a painful truth. Sometimes the dream you've been chasing is a dream you've outgrown. Letting go doesn't mean failure. It means evolution. She rethought her path. She reimagined her identity. And she ended up becoming one of the leading scientists shaping space missions without ever stepping inside a rocket. She didn't lose herself. She reinvented herself. And so can you.
Let's talk about the science behind reinvention. People who think their personality is fixed say things like, "This is just who I am. I don't change. This is my nature. I'm not that type of person." But research shows something extraordinary. The most successful and adaptable people see themselves as ever evolving. They don't say, "I am." They say, "I can become." They don't say, "I'm bad at this." They say, "I'm learning this." They don't say, "This is permanent." They say, "This is temporary." They treat their identity like software, always updating, always improving, always evolving. When you adopt this mindset, you unlock the ability to transform any part of your life, your habits, your skills, your relationships, your career, your choices, your future. You become a designer of yourself, not a defender of your past. Letting go of the opinions that control you. One of the biggest obstacles to reinvention is the fear of judgment. We fear disappointing others. We fear being misunderstood. We fear being criticized. We fear becoming a beginner again. We fear stepping off the path others expect us to walk. But here's what you need to remember. People don't think about you as much as you think they do. They're busy thinking about themselves. And the ones who judge your growth are often the ones afraid of growing themselves. There's a saying, if someone prefers the old version of you, that's their problem, not your responsibility. You are allowed to change. You are allowed to rethink your life. You are allowed to say, "This no longer fits me." Your life is not a performance for others. It's a journey for yourself. Choose growth over approval. Choose evolution over comfort. Choose yourself over expectations. Updating the stories you tell yourself. Let's go deeper. Each of us is shaped by internal stories. I'm terrible at math. I'm shy. I'm not creative. I'm unlucky in relationships. I can't lead. I'm not smart like others. I'll never be successful. These stories become mental tattoos, permanent by repetition, not by truth. But a story is not a destiny. A story is a narrative, and you can rewrite it. Let me show you how. The 3 steps to reinventing your identity. Step 1. Define who you want to become, not based on your past, but based on your potential. Ask yourself, who do I want to be 2 years from now? What skills do I want to master? What habits do I want to live by? What kind of person do I admire? What qualities do I want to embody? Because you cannot become someone new if you don't know who that is. Step 2. Act like the future you today. Identity is shaped by actions, not words. If the future you is confident, start acting with confidence now. If the future you is disciplined, take one disciplined action today. If the future you is healthy, make one healthy choice today. If the future you is financially smart, make one smart financial step today. Every action is a vote for the person you're becoming. Step 3. Let go of the old identity that no longer serves you. Ask yourself, which beliefs about myself are outdated? Which habits do I need to release? Which fears belong to the past, not the future? Which version of me am I still protecting, even though it's time to move on? Reinvention is not only about adding new things, it's about subtracting the things that hold you back. Shedding, releasing, unlearning. Just like a snake shedding its old skin, you must let go to grow. The art of unlearning. Most people think growth is about learning more, but real growth is often about unlearning. Unlearning the fear of judgment, unlearning the need to always be right, unlearning the belief that change is dangerous, unlearning habits that served the old version of you, unlearning the limits that were never yours to begin with. Your mind is like a bookshelf. When it becomes crowded with outdated knowledge, there's no space for new wisdom. Unlearning creates space for the growth you seek. The power of small rethinks every day. You don't need to transform your life overnight. Real transformation happens through small daily rethinking moments. A rethinking of a habit, a rethinking of a reaction, a rethinking of a belief, a rethinking of a goal, a rethinking of a fear, a rethinking a relationship, a rethinking your potential. Every day offers a chance to update your understanding of who you are. Reinvention is not a one-time event, it's a lifelong practice. The rethinking life. Imagine living a life where you don't cling to outdated beliefs, you don't fear change, you don't limit yourself, you don't pretend to be someone you no longer are. You embrace curiosity, you embrace uncertainty, you embrace growth. Imagine waking up and saying, "Who I was is not who I must be. I can change, I can grow, I can become." That life is possible. That life is available. That life begins with one decision, the decision to rethink yourself. Your new beginning starts now. Before we end this series, I want to leave you with a powerful thought. The biggest risk in life is not changing. The biggest danger is staying the same when the world is evolving. The greatest tragedy is letting your past self decide your future. You don't have to wait for the right time. You don't need permission. You don't need everyone to understand you.
Your future is built by actions you take today, not by memories of who you used to be. If you've been waiting for a sign to reinvent yourself, this is it. This is your moment. This is your turning point. This is the beginning of the next chapter of your life. Don't fear becoming someone new. Fear becoming someone you never wanted to be. Thank you for watching this entire series. Thank you for your curiosity, your openness, and your willingness to grow. If these 4 parts inspired you, if they helped you rethink your beliefs, your relationships, or your identity, make sure you subscribe, like, and share this final episode. Your support helps this channel reach more people who are ready to grow. And remember, stay curious, stay humble, stay open, and never stop reinventing yourself. This is not the end. This is your new beginning. I'll see you in the next video. Take care and goodbye for now.